Are you looking for inspiration on a daily basis? Then check out Deal to Heal Teas. With our inspirational teas, you're sure to find something to inspire you. That's dealtohealteas.com. Put some inspiration in your situation. Wear inspirational tea and be inspired all day. Let's go to dealtohealteas.com. Again, that's dealtohealteas.com. Hey guys, if you're enjoying this podcast, then I know you enjoy the Girl Dad Discussion podcast. I'm your host, Ernest James, and I believe the relationship between a daughter and her father is one of the most important relationships a young lady can have. And therefore, my mission is to promote the daddy-daughter relationship by sharing the voices of girl dads to the world. So check out our podcast on every platform where podcasts can be listened to. And if you want to watch the podcast, check us out on our YouTube channel. Again, that's the Girl Dad Discussions podcast with your host, Ernest James. Welcome to Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. On this podcast, my guest and I will discuss topics and ways to help us to heal in every area of our lives. I believe that everyone can live a life that is happy, healthy, and whole. So I'm on a mission to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill. Deal with your problem, heal from the pain, and fulfill your purpose. Thanks for tuning in. Let's get to it. Welcome to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. I am your host, Ernest James, and I believe that everyone can and should live a life that is whole, healed, and healthy. And therefore, I'm on a mission to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill, to deal with your problems, to heal from the pain, and to fulfill your purpose. Thank you guys once again for tuning in to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. If you haven't already, make sure that you listen, like, subscribe, and share our podcast on all of your social media platforms, all of our social media platforms, and also on the whatever your podcast listening platforms. Make sure you guys subscribe to the podcast. Also, make sure you guys subscribe to our new YouTube channel, Podcasting Network. Again, make sure you guys log into the Deal to Heal Podcasting Network. All right, on audio, all of your on YouTube. Man, I'm messing up, but make sure you guys log in on YouTube. Also, check out our partner podcast, the Girl Dad Discussions podcast, which is myself and other girl dads having the conversation about what it is to have daughters and the relationship between dads and daughters. Make sure you guys check that out. So today, just like any other day, we are blessed with the guest, Mr. Sam Mitchell. How you doing today?
Hey, buddy. Thanks for having me on. My apologies about that music blasting on me earlier.
That's fine. That's fine, man. First of all, let me say thank you for being on. I definitely appreciate you because you could have been doing anything else with anyone else, but you're here with me and my listeners, and we definitely appreciate it. So, Sam, we're going to jump right into this thing, man. Do me a favor, introduce yourself to my audience and tell us a little bit about who you are and what it is that you do.
All right, so what I do is I'm Sam Mitchell, and I run a podcast called Autism Rocks and Rolls. It's a podcast about autism and how we cope with daily struggles that you may or may not understand. Through the podcast, it's grown so much. I developed sponsorships, a board of 8, and I play in events in Indianapolis where I'm from, and speaking engagements. I've spoken in Oklahoma, Orlando 3 times, Canada twice, Stuart, Florida, and Washington, D.C.
All right. So, Sam, it's interesting, right? Because one of the other things that I do is home health care, and I have worked with persons who also have had autism myself. But just for those who may not be familiar, can you kind of explain what autism is and how it affects you yourself or just people in general?
I see it. Well, society sees it as a disability and a disability where people struggle with social cues and certain motor skills. They may not. They may be wearing diapers still at 6 years old, for example. But for me, I see it as a different way of thinking, which in my mind is we just think a little bit on the quirky maybe and on the different side than others, but we still get to the same destination.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's cool because that's exactly it. Even with my experiences with the those who I have encountered and have had close interactions with, it's exactly that. You know, it's just like we see a little different, see things differently, and but yes, and still get to the same thing in the end. And so I just wanted to touch on that a little bit because a lot of people don't necessarily understand it. Like we see people, we see the signs, we see the banners, you know, but we don't necessarily know what it is. But so I want to talk a little bit about in this this time period that we are in now, you know, with mental health being talked about so much. And like you said, yourself, even looking at autism, you said you see it a little as a disability is what you said, and I always like to say instead of saying disability, I say different abilities, right? Because it's just different. You know, like you said, we think different, we operate differently, but we still get to the same end goal in the end. And so, speaking on that, um, we're just looking at how things now, how have things changed even in your life now, especially with your podcast, that now that you're bringing more awareness to it, you know, how has the people around you or those who just encounter you and learn from you, how has your podcast and your whole mission kind of changed people's way of thinking about mental health and even thinking about the things that you know, the things dealing with autism as a whole?
Well, I think they see there's more to autism than what they see on the outside. There's a
Mhm.
lot of internal thoughts which don't get expressed. They got
Okay.
expressed more on the podcast.
Yeah, yeah. So let's talk about the podcast a little bit. So how long have you been doing it?
Since October 2019, I was 16 years old. No, scratch that. That's when I found podcasting. 17 is when I started my own podcast, but 16 is when I found the podcasting. It started in my high school's media club. Fell in love with it ever since. Knew I had to start my own.
All right, all right, all right. So since you started, how many episodes are you in? Maybe.
Oh, good Lord, man. I'm going to lose count. I lost count already. I completed 3 seasons. You might have to do the math. 60 in season 1, 60 in season 2, and then I think, yeah, 3 in season 3. So 60
Okay.
plus 60 plus 3.
Okay. Let's just say a lot, right?
Yeah, I'm not a math guy. Don't ask me to do math. I'm not doing that unless I have a calculator with me. English
Right.
brain comes from my mother's English teacher.
Right, right. I definitely understand that. My mother wasn't a teacher by trade, but definitely a teacher by actions, and she was a writer. So I'm in that same boat with you as far as definitely. Well, my dad was a math teacher, so I guess I do have a little bit of math on that too. But my mom was a great teacher. So since you started the podcast, what have been some of your greatest moments, you know, as far as guests and things that have happened, you know, since you started? Like, what are some of your best moments on your podcast?
The time I got to have Mick Foley on the show is an
Mm,
example. The time I got to have other wrestlers on the show, the amazing people I've had, when people actually wanted to come to me instead of me asking, "Hey, can you be on my show?"
right. Yeah.
Right. The time I got to go to Oklahoma was pretty great. And then just some of the projects I've done. I mean, I've done a panel about reimagining success with several people. I've done an anxiety session because I also have really bad anxiety. I also did an
Mhm.
episode on that. And then I currently went through a session from a doctor in Hungary, out of anywhere in the world, and he opened my eyes to see that I have self worth and what my true version is of myself.
Okay. All right. Man, that's awesome. That's awesome. So not only have you had some amazing people on your podcast, but you've also won some awards. So tell us a little bit about the awards that you've won through your your own actions and through the podcast also.
The top 10 people's choice. I learned about this one in particular just through my mother. She said, "Hey, you're on the top 10 people's choice." Okay, cool. She also told me I was in the top 200 podcasts in Canada of all time. I won a Davy Award, silver. Also gotten some other credentials here and there. I mean, the best business in Indiana, Avon Media Business in Avon, Indiana. And then I've also was placed in a JAG competition, which stands for Jobs for American Graduates. That shows you how to interview people and all the job skills you need to do in order to survive in the job universe. And I got second place in entrepreneurship.
Oh wow, that's great. That's great. So you are you located in Indiana? I know you mentioned you about winning the
Mm-hmm.
awards, man. Okay,
Yep.
cool, cool. Okay, well you're in my neck of the woods. I'm in Hammond, Indiana, in the Chicagoland area. So that's cool. So let's talk a little bit about because you mentioned about winning the awards, and I know that has to be a great feeling within itself, but if I'm not mistaken, you also have a TED talk that you did.
Yep, called Soul Structure. It's about why those on the spectrum need structure. In my lifespan, buddy, I wish everything in my life was structured, but
Yeah.
sadly, it wasn't. We still had to deal with daily changes, which I also did an episode on.
All right. All right. So how has it been? So as a doing a TED talk, which is something I still haven't done. I'm working on it. Hopefully soon I will get one done. But doing a TED talk and being a motivational speaker or just a speaker, because I'm guessing as a TED talk, doing a TED talk, you actually have to be good at speaking. And so, do you consider yourself a motivational speaker?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Cool. So, how has that been? Have you had a chance to speak in any schools?
Yep. Also, I've spoken in Shoal schools and Avon schools, River Birch Elementary.
Okay. Cool. 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 So, how is that? How is that? How has that been? That experiences of you being able to talk to your peers and children and other kids, just about opening up their eyes to what autism is and what it means to be, just different. How is that been? How have you been received even by the students?
I think pretty well, at least. I don't get booed, so
Right.
that's me.
Yeah, that's always a good indicator. Okay, cool. So with your podcast and with your speaking, first of all, let's talk a little bit about entrepreneurship, because I know, as a speaker, definitely as having a TEDx talk and things of that to promote yourself on bigger stages, that there is a business side to it, and so as a young entrepreneur, how has entrepreneurship been with you, and what do you think that you want, or should I say, what do you think your goal is as an entrepreneur, that you're looking to meeting? How has that been for you?
Well, I mean, obviously, from a business point of view, I mean, I want to clearly do good. That's my first goal. But
Mm-hmm.
the money is kind of nice. I won't lie to you there.
Right.
I mean, I'm not in it for it. I mean, I'm in it just to do some good for the world, although it
Yeah.
ain't built for me. But from the entrepreneur side, I like to work with people instead of working against people.
Mm-hmm.
With that session, for example, I did a little trade off.
Okay. Okay. Cool. So what kind of merchandise do you have? Which, because I know you have your website, and is autismrocksandrolls.com, right? And so what kind of merchandise do you also have um, for those that get a chance to visit your website?
T-shirts right now. We had an Etsy shop, but the darn thing closed on us.
Hmm. Okay. So only t-shirts at this moment?
Yep.
Okay, cool, cool, cool. So, tell me a little bit more about because I mentioned about the website, which is Autism Rocks and Rolls. But tell me a little bit more about the things that we can look to find when we have a chance to visit your website. What all kind of things are there that we can learn from?
We you can learn about autism is a certain thing, not the most. That's kind of pretty much common sense, but I would also
Mhm.
say positivity is something you can take from. Maybe how to be a better person and just kindness. Just smiling at someone can make a difference in this big goofy world. And I just can't believe I stole that from one of the people who also is the host of the Son Duncan show, which is where I work at the radio station.
Oh, cool. So you work in radio. Okay.
For an internship for the summer.
Sweet, sweet. Okay, cool. That's cool. That's something I've wanted to do even before I got into podcasting. But I think podcasting is sort of like having your own radio show. So I guess in a way, I still made that kind of come through. So do me a favor, Sam, before we get out of here, I want you to have a minute just to talk about, whatever that there's a listener, right? There's a listener who's listening to the podcast, this episode right now, who's listening to you and wants to know, wants to be left with something. So I just want you to leave us with whatever word of advice, whatever thing that you may have yourself or message you may want to leave us with or leave the listener with. So when they walk away from this episode, that they're not just saying, "Oh, that was a nice conversation," but something that they can take along with them to say, "I remember this is something that Sam said." So I want you to give us something that whatever message that you want to leave with the listeners.
So I think it's not merely motivational, it's just the truth of life. If
Mhm.
you could be nice and not act so stupid, I think the world would get along so much better. That's for people in general.
That is that is so true. That is so true. I think it's I can't think of the comedian name right now, but he said you can't fix stupid, right? Sometimes that's just what it is. So Sam, I just want to say again, I thank you so very much for being on a podcast. Thank you for taking out the time to share with us your story and your website and things of that. Um, so I think pretty much I just really wanted to highlight some of the things that you were doing with your podcast, some of the things that you were doing yourself as being a person with autism, even stepping out to be an example to people who may have different abilities, right? But showing them that no matter what your ability is, you can still be your best self. And like you said, be a little nicer in the world to make the world a better place. So, Sam, I just want to say thank you once again for being on the podcast, for taking out the time today to share with my listeners and myself. And again, I thank you and your mom. I see you guys are on a road trip, but I thank you
Yep.
guys very much for taking out your time. Hi, mom, for taking out the time for to be on the podcast. I really appreciate it.
Not a problem, brother. I don't mind doing it. It's pretty easy too when you're broadcasting, Major.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I would say it's always easier when you're on the other side of the mic, right? When all you got to do is talk, and then somebody else got to do all the technical stuff. So again, Sam, thank you so very much for being on. I really appreciate it. To my listeners, thank you guys for tuning in once again to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. Do me a favor, man. You guys make sure that you check out again our other website, our other podcast, the Girl Dad Discussions podcast. Make sure you check out our YouTube channel. Also, make sure you check out speaking of t-shirts, make sure you check out the Deal to Heal tees. Again, that's Deal, the number 2, Heal tees. Put some inspiration in your situation. Wear an inspirational tee and be inspired all day. Also, make sure that you guys check out our podcast merch, which including our t-shirts with our podcast logos on it. So make sure that you guys check that out. All right. So again, thank you again, Sam, for being on. Thank you, listeners, for tuning in once again to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. And until next time, you guys be blessed. Thanks for listening to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. Remember to listen, like, subscribe, and share. This episode has been brought to you by Deal to Heal Tees. Put some inspiration in your situation. Wear an inspirational tee and be inspired all day. Let's go to dealtohealtees.myshopify.com. Remember, our mission is to help you to deal, heal, and fulfill. Deal with your problem, heal from the pain, and fulfill your purpose. Thanks for listening.